Hello and welcome to this edition of Reporters. Today we take you to Ukraine, where Courtade, who is with me, hello Marine,
hello.
Welcome to the show, has met with victims of war sex crimes and those who investigate these crimes in order to make sure impunity could not reign after the war. So first of all, we know that victims of these types of crimes often have a difficult job to speak out, especially on camera. How did you go about interviewing these people?
C'est vrai que c'était tout l'enjeu de ce film.
The whole difficulty with this film was to convince them to talk to us. So it was a lot of work ahead of filming to explain how we worked and why we were doing this documentary. The other difficulty was to manage to convince them to talk without recreating trauma, especially in the way we would ask the questions. The victims you'll see in the film all accepted to talk as a political act, to break the taboo about sexual war crimes and to encourage others to speak out.
Well, Marine, we're going to watch the document you've brought back from Ukraine right now. It is a report that you produce with Ilioné Schultz.
Я Галина, 1962 року народження. На данный момент пенсионер. Я никогда даже не предполагала, что сюда могут зайти военные. 7-го уже были здесь везде. Много танков, много военных было. Они тут стреляли в разные стороны кругом. Все тряслось. Спросил у меня: вы одна живете? Я говорю: одна. А он: я сейчас проверю все. Ко мне: раздевайся на меня. И он меня туда завалил на диван. Девочки, извините, я просто не могу повторять такое. Это было страшно. Это было долго, это было страшно. Это было... Если бы я была, может быть, помоложе там, то я бы, может быть, знаете как, подлечили меня там, и я бы не давала никаких ни интервью, ничего. Но я считаю своим долгом как человека, как женщину, как гражданина Украины, что, защитить других, чтобы этого не повторилось.
Galina has dared to speak out with her face uncovered. Because she's not so young, maybe because she feels she has nothing to lose, but mainly it's in the name of others. Many sexual violence offences have been reported since the start of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Offences concerning women, men, and children. The task of counting how many victims there could be is proving almost impossible. Many choose to suffer in silence through fear or shame. What does it take to find them and encourage them to report these crimes? And how can offenders be brought to justice? Irina Dovgan has taken it upon herself to find these victims of sexual crimes and encourage them to speak to the authorities. This Ukrainian has founded an association to help these victims. Since the start of spring, she's been traveling all over the free territories with her husband. This time, she's in the Kherson region, a city on the edge of the war, right on the front line.
Oh look, there's a petrol station there, but totally destroyed.
It's like when we went to Bucha.
Irina and her husband have not come empty-handed. She knows that these women who have been raped may have been infected without knowing it.
Women don't talk about it. And they don't even go to the doctor.
Irina was once a beautician, now transformed into a militant activist. She works full-time for her association, set up after she fell victim to pro-Russian separatists in 2014. She sees her work as a sort of revenge against those who attacked her.
When I was detained, I was raped with a bag over my head. I know I could never recognize this person. He'll never be punished if he's still alive. My dream is that at an international level, it never happens again.
Over time, Irina has built up a solid network of contacts. They have told her about a woman who may know some victims.
Hello. Oh, he's so cute, this little one all in blue.
Irina's host lives here with her husband and a war orphan they have adopted.
I came to see you because you travel around the region. You talk to local people. You must have contacts and must have heard things. I wanted to ask you if...
Yes, I understand. A lot happened around here.
The conversation then takes an unexpected turn.
It happened to me. My husband doesn't want me to talk about it. Someone informed on us. They told them we were helping the Ukrainian army. When they came, I spent 2 days in their basement. At the start, they electrocuted me with a thing like this. I couldn't really see because my head was covered. Then I passed out. They raped me several times. Then they freed me. Then they even wanted to help me.
to be free of their guilt.
Irina has found herself face to face with a victim. She knows the procedure well.
But tell me, did you talk to the prosecutor without telling your husband?
Only to the SBU.
Only to security services. Okay, that's good. But it's the prosecutor's office that collects evidence. They're the ones who can build cases.
I haven't been to see the prosecutor because, you know, my husband suffers a lot because he wasn't able to protect me. That's also why I don't want him to be involved with this conversation.
Irina plans to return the next day to convince her to press charges. Going to the authorities remains a complicated decision for victims of sexual crimes in Ukraine. Only a little over 170 cases are currently being handled. Victims who have been left to fend for themselves too often and for too long. In the country's west, far from the combat zones, Irina is organizing a meeting for her association. Galina, the same woman who we interviewed earlier, has traveled 700 kilometers to meet these women and talk about her ordeal. A few weeks after the rape, when her village was freed, she asked for medical help. But at the doctor's office, men from Ukrainian intelligence were the ones who examined her.
One of his men told me to get undressed. The gynecologist stood far away, in the corner of the room. When I spread my legs, he said, "Ah, yes, the case is very clear here." The other one took photos. The doctor saw everything, but she didn't move. I said, "I need treatment." I asked for all the possible tests, for HIV, STDs. The gynecologist said she couldn't do anything until I paid. So I borrowed some money from my neighbor.
Thank you for sharing your story with us. You've highlighted a great problem.
From now on, everything will get better.
Yes, okay. I've spent so much time alone, and now I'm so happy to have you girls.
All these women supporting Galina have also suffered sexual violence dating back to 2014 in the Donbass region. 8 years on, Irina finally believes that things are starting to move.
There weren't many of us who could speak openly, and nobody could really understand our suffering. Since the full-scale invasion started, I feel like the whole world and the Ukrainian authorities have finally started to believe what has happened to us.
So what hope can victims have of justice being served? The International Criminal Court in The Hague opened an investigation in March 2022, which includes allegations of sexual crimes. Ilya's story was among those passed on as evidence. Last April, this 22-year-old Ukrainian was raped at a checkpoint by soldiers from Russian forces. Since suffering this trauma, he has attempted suicide several times.
8 человек. Они сбили с меня с ног, меня перешвыривали друг друга, при этом били по спине, по голове. И у меня, получается, кажется, меня начали пускать по кругу. Как потом оказалось, это все длилось около 8 часов. Они это все, весь этот процесс, они снимали на телефоны. Я помню их физиономии, я помню некоторых, я даже помню по именам, как они между собой переговаривались. И, на мое мнение, там был лидер этой всей сволочей Рахим.
Ilya remembers the first name of the group's leader, an important clue. But what was his rank? And was he giving or receiving orders? The answers to these questions will determine the outcome of the legal proceedings initiated by his lawyer.
Those giving the orders could be brought before the Hague, before international justice. Those who obeyed this order will be brought before Ukrainian tribunals. It is possible that some of them are already in our prisons. That's why we have to work together to identify these people as quickly as possible.
I am sure that the International Criminal Court in The Hague will not remain silent. Is there not a time limit on these cases?
A war crime has no statute of limitations.
That's good to know.
Whether this sexual violence is part of a strategy or used as a weapon of war, this lawyer believes that the Russian authorities are ultimately responsible.
I'm sure that there's no written order that says rape Ukrainian civilians. That would be ridiculous. But actually, that is what is in their heads. Putin and the leaders at the highest levels have only added fuel to the fire by saying that Ukraine is not a country and that there are bad people here who do not deserve to have their rights respected.
Will these offences be prosecuted as war crimes, crimes against humanity, or genocide? It's likely to take several years for international justice to categorize this sexual violence. 3 trials have already taken place in Ukraine in the absence of the accused Russian soldiers.
Well, Marina is still with me in the studio. Marine, Ukraine is, of course, still an active war zone. How hard is it for the Ukrainian justice to work in the country?
Of course, it's very difficult for them to work, to meet the victims, even to find victims, because often their priority is just to survive, not to speak out. Many victims have left the country to go abroad, and of course the conflict is ongoing, so there are all sorts of logistical difficulties. The front line is constantly moving. All that complicates the work for the prosecutor's office.
And Marine, you interviewed the head of this prosecutor's office, this special prosecutor's office. This is what she had to say.
Unfortunately, a pattern is emerging across the whole territory of Ukraine. Wherever Russian servicemen have been present, crimes of a sexual nature were committed. Nobody is safe, not women, nor men, or children. It affects all civilians from 4 to 82 years old. We don't see these sexual crimes as isolated cases. This is a systematic maneuver of intimidation and extermination of the local population.
Are the criminal courts doing enough when it comes to war sex crimes?
To this day, the prosecutor's office has over 170 cases regarding men, women, children. We're talking about sexual war crimes, so that means rapes, but also genital torture, forced nudity. The whole work of the prosecutor's office today is to investigate into these cases, knowing that these are only the tip of the iceberg. Throughout these investigations, they're going to determine the crimes that are systematic and those that are isolated events. With all the evidence they manage to collect, there will be the second step, the work of justice. Of course, when you look back at the history of war crimes justice, you realize that sexual war crimes are hardly ever condemned. Very few perpetrators are prosecuted, whether it be on the international or the national level. And that's the whole difficulty, both for the prosecutor's office and for Ukraine as a whole.
A challenge indeed. Thank you, Marine, and thank you for watching. Reporters, do stay tuned to France 24. We have more news coming your way.